Okay, so let's start as we usually do with a few minutes meditation on the breath. So I'm just going to start you off on that and then go and get my glasses. But I'll be meditating on a breath as I go. So I think everybody knows how to do this. So just find your breath going out, coming in through your nostrils, and then focus all your attention at that point, watching your breath going out and coming back in. Okay, thank you. So this is the second class of this five-part series, Buddhism in a nutshell. And as it says in the information, Kurukulla information, that we'll be basing this on Lama Tsongkhapa's short text, The Foundation of All Good Qualities, with the commentary by Kunu Lama Rinpoche. So as it says in the link to Rinpoche's commentary, that he gave his teaching to monks and nuns of the International Mahayana Institute in Bodhanath, near Kathmandu, Nepal, in 1975. And at that time I was one of those monks and I was at that teaching. Well, I'll say something more about Kuna Lama another time, but he's the author of this text, vast as the heavens, deep as the sea, which is, the subtitle is Verses in Praise of Bodhicitta. So he wrote this text with a verse on bodhicitta, and there are 330 something, 333 maybe of them, so almost one for every day of the year. One for every day of the year if you take Sundays off. Just trying to figure it out. And so there's a brief bio here, but we'll maybe look at that another time. In those days, back in Nepal in 1975, you know, the way the Kopan meditation courses were set up, and 1975 was the last year in which 2 courses a year were given, in the spring and the fall. After that, Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche traveled a lot, started traveling the world. Well, they started in 74, but it got too much with all their travels to have 2 one-month courses a year. So it came down to the November course, which last year was the 52nd course, Kopan Lamrim course, and this year, of course, there's not going to be one. But so usually Rinpoche would come in the morning around 9 and 9:30 to give a morning discourse before lunch, and he would often start, I think almost always start with a verse from Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, or a verse from Kuna Lama's book, A Lamp. This is called Vast as the Heavens, Deep as the Sea. The actual title of the text is A Jewel Lamp in Praise of Bodhicitta, I think. The Jewel Lamp, a Praise of Bodhicitta. So Rinpoche would quote a verse from Kuna Lama or Shantideva and then give an explanation, a commentary on that verse as a way of setting bodhicitta motivation for the day's activities, you know, teachings, discussion, meditation. And actually we've collected together a lot of those motivational talks Rinpoche gave, quoting Shantideva or Kuna Lama Rinpoche, and we'll be publishing those maybe next year as a collection. So Kuna Lama Rinpoche started off, and I'm going to start off this evening session with this motivation. The ultimate purpose of listening to teachings is to receive enlightenment. Therefore, before listening to this teaching on the foundation of all good qualities, it's necessary to cultivate the pure thought of bodhicitta, the main cause of enlightenment. We receive enlightenment only by practicing Dharma. Without practicing Dharma, there's no way to receive enlightenment. Enlightenment can be received only through the practice of Dharma. So if we think, you know, the purpose of my life is to free all sentient beings from suffering and lead them to enlightenment. And in order to do that, I need to reach enlightenment myself. And my reaching enlightenment depends on my studying and practicing and realizing the entire graduated path to enlightenment. So in order to reach enlightenment, to free sentient beings and bring them to enlightenment, I'm going to listen to this teaching by Kurukulla Lama Rinpoche on the foundation of all good qualities, which encompasses the entire Lam Rim, the entire stages of the path from beginning to end. Okay, so that last bit was mine. And this was translated, by the way, by Lama Zopa Rinpoche at the time. So Rinpoche was teaching in Tibetan and Kurukulla Lama Rinpoche was teaching in Tibetan and Lama Zopa Rinpoche was translating into English for us. So enlightenment can be received only through the practice of Dharma. There are two types of Dharma, outer and inner. So the Tibetan word for Buddhist is Nangpa, which some people translate as insider or inside being, an inner being. So some people think that means, oh, inner being means, since Buddhism was all about the mind, it's about being more concerned with developing the mind than the outside world. And while that's true, that's not the actual meaning of Nangpa, inner being. Means an insider means you're inside the teaching of the Buddha. You've taken refuge, through there can be 2 or 3 causes for taking refuge, depending how you think about it. There are 2 basic causes. One is the understanding of and fear of the suffering of cyclic existence, fear of samsaric suffering, particularly the sufferings of the lower realms, the hell, hungry ghost, and animal realms. Fear of suffering and full confidence in the 3 precious sublimes, as Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche calls them. Usually we call the 3 jewels of refuge. Rinpoche doesn't like that translation. He says it's lacking. And it doesn't really encompass the full translation of the Tibetan term, Konchok Sum. He calls it 3 rare precious sublimes. So Konchok Sum, Sum means 3. Kon means precious and Chok means sublime. So the 3 precious sublime ones. So full confidence in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, the 3, to lead us from suffering to freedom from suffering. Then the 3rd cause that's sometimes given is to do with the Mahayana way of taking refuge, which is we fear the suffering of cyclic existence, not just for ourselves, but we fear, for all sentient beings. And we have full confidence in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha to guide not only ourselves, but all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. So we are motivated by bodhicitta, the determination to reach enlightenment for sake of all sentient beings, that we just generated, that one. We're motivated by bodhicitta to go to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, the 3 rare precious sublimes. In order for all sentient beings to reach enlightenment. So last week talked generally about the mind and sentient enlightened beings and sentient beings and how it's possible to reach enlightenment. Or maybe I didn't talk about that, but and the structure of cyclic existence and beings who are within cyclic existence, the beings who have escaped from cyclic existence, and a little bit about the realms, so like that. how is it possible that all sentient beings can reach enlightenment, become Buddhas, is that all sentient beings, from human beings to the smallest insect to hungry ghosts and hell beings and even the highest gods, every sentient being's mind has a clear light nature, which is only temporarily obscured by delusion and particularly ignorance. And our minds have been obscured by ignorance and other delusions since beginningless time. So we've never really revealed the clear light nature of our mind. But by applying the right method, which is a practice of Dharma, we can remove all the delusions and then the stains or the imprints of the delusions, gross and subtle obscurations, and realize the ultimate nature of our own mind. And having removed gross and subtle obscurations from our mind, we're left with this pure, clear light nature of mind. So that's why sometimes you see, oh, you're already enlightened, you just don't know it yet, which is not really true. If you're enlightened, you'd know it, and it would feel a lot different from how we feel right now. But what it's saying is you're already Buddha. You're not already Buddha. You have the potential to be Buddha. It's already within you. It's not you have to get it from somewhere else and bring it in. It has to be uncovered, and that may not be as easy as it sounds, but that's the project, to uncover the pure, clear light nature of mind. So Kurukulla Lama goes on, there are two types of Dharma, outer and inner. Inner Dharma means Buddha Dharma. Outer Dharma refers to the non-Buddhist religions. So Nangpa is an inner being, an insider, a Buddhist, Nangpa, and the others are called Chilopa, outsiders. The religions followed by non-Buddhist religions, the religions followed by non-Buddhists. Of these, there are 5 divisions. So, oh my God. Rabbit has been eating my book. This book, Meditation on Emptiness, Jeffrey Hopkins, I don't know if I mentioned it last week or not. This is like the best reference book there is, I think, on Mahayana Buddhism. It contains everything we need to know about the 5 this and the 10 that and the 2 of these and the 4 of those, and I'm still in shock that Rabbit ate this book. Rabbits shouldn't be in here. So there's a bit of a section here on the non-Buddhist religions, which I'm not going to go into, but you can find that for yourselves. Meditation on Emptiness, Jeffrey Hopkins, published by Wisdom. Okay. By practicing outer Dharma, the non-Buddhist religions, you can receive only temporary samsaric pleasures, but you cannot receive enlightenment. Non-Buddhist religions do not contain the path to freedom from cyclic existence. They do not contain the path out of the 6 realms because basically because they don't teach emptiness. And, you know, the Buddha, as I mentioned last week too, the Buddha studied with all these other teachers. Of course, there was no Buddhism at that time. He hadn't started it yet. But, you know, he studied with all these non-Buddhist teachers, and when he felt he'd learned everything they had to teach him, he realized that he still hadn't realized the truth. So that's when he went off to do it by himself, and he succeeded in Bodh Gaya. To become enlightened, you have to practice inner Dharma, Buddha Dharma, what we call Buddha Dharma, what we call the teachings of the Buddha, or Dharma. With respect to Buddha Dharma, there are 4 schools of philosophical thought: Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, Chittamatra, and Madhyamaka. So these 4 schools encompass the 2 main divisions of Buddhism, the Hinayana and the Mahayana. The Vaibhashika and Sautrantika are Hinayana schools, and the Chittamatra and the Madhyamaka are Mahayana schools. And the Madhyamaka has 2 divisions, the Svatantrika and the Sautrantika is the Hinayana, second Hinayana school. The Svatantrika is one of the 2 divisions of the Madhyamaka. And then the highest division of the Madhyamaka is the Prasangika, which is the highest view, Buddhist view, and the one taught by Nagarjuna and Vinayadeva and Chandrakirti, Shantideva, and the Gelug school. That's the that's the view that we espouse, the Prasangika Madhyamaka. Sometimes you say Madhyamaka. They say Madhyamaka is the school. Madhyamika is a follower of that school. So we are Madhyamikas or Prasangikas. The teachings that we should practice are those of the Mahayana, in particular those of the middle way, the Madhyamaka school, whose view is the best, most perfect, and pure. But while the view of the Madhyamaka school is purer than that of the Chittamatra, and is that which we should study, when it comes to extensive action or skillful means, the teachings of the Chittamatra and the Madhyamaka are the same. The Madhyamaka, therefore, contains the best teachings on both profound view and extensive conduct. So, you know, as Rinpoche said, we divide the Buddhist schools into the Hinayana and Mahayana. Those 2 schools contain all the teachings that the Buddha gave. Within the Hinayana, there's the Shravakayana, the Pratyeka Buddhayana. So the Shravakas are the hearers, those who listen to the teachings and take vows and keep their vows very strictly, and they're the Hinayana practitioners, and you know, through meditating on the 4 Noble Truths and the 12 links of dependent origination, these different teachings, they realize emptiness and attain liberation. The Pratyeka Buddhas, are called, is translated as solitary realizers. So these are practitioners who don't study with a teacher in this life, but they've had teachings in previous lives, and in this life they go off by themselves, and based on the knowledge they've accumulated in previous lives and, you know, whatever they did in this life, they go off into caves or the jungle and they meditate and they they realize emptiness and freedom by themselves without necessarily having to get ordained and keep all those vows and study with a teacher. In the Mahayana, there's also two divisions, the Sutrayana and the Vajrayana. So the Sutrayana, or Paramitayana, the vehicle of the perfections, is a gradual path to enlightenment, and the Vajrayana is the quick path to enlightenment, or Buddhist Tantra, Tantrayana or Mantrayana, different names. That's the quick path to enlightenment. So that's one way of dividing. The other way of dividing or explaining the teachings is that the two paths of method and wisdom. And so the usual analogy is, a bird needs two wings to fly, can't fly with one wing, just go around in circles. So in order to ascend to enlightenment, we need to fly with the two wings of method and wisdom. So, and when you see the merit field or the refuge field, there's a drawing of it in one of these books. Anyway, never mind. So, but you'll see there's, Lama Tsongkhapa, and then there's like a tree kind of shape, or a bell shape around him, and the different tantric deities and gurus and so on. And then there are two clouds with collected teachers in those clouds. And on one side is Manjushri with Nagarjuna and Asanga and the whole wisdom lineage. So the wisdom lineage, the teachings on emptiness. And on the other side is Maitreya Buddha. So there's Maitreya there behind me. He's the next Buddha, when the teachings of the current Buddha's teaching, Shakyamuni Buddha's teachings, have completely disappeared, and it's kind of been hell on earth for a while. Then when the karma of the sentient beings is right, Maitreya Buddha will appear like Shakyamuni did and turn the wheel of Dharma and re-establish the Dharma teachings and like that. So Maitreya Buddha gave teachings to a Sangha. There's a long story about how a Sangha made contact with Maitreya. He gave those teachings to a Sangha who passed them on to his brother Vasubandhu and a bunch of other Indian pundits, and that became the method lineage, which emphasizes bodhicitta. So these two wings of emptiness and bodhicitta or method are by practicing these two lineages, we attain enlightenment. We realize emptiness by practicing the wisdom teachings of Nagarjuna, and by practicing the method or teachings of developing compassion and great compassion and bodhicitta. And one of the main texts that we study is, when a Sangha ascended to the Pure Land of Tushita with Maitreya, after he'd meditated on Maitreya for 12 years, Maitreya gave him teachings on 5 texts, which are, there are two texts that Lama Yeshe actually taught us. There's Uttanamche or Madhyanta Vibhanga and Dharma Dhammata, Cheni Namche. And then he taught the Abhisamaya Lankara, which is the main text the monks in the monastery study 70 topics and so forth to that explains the method lineage of teachings, development of bodhicitta. Then he also taught the Mahayana Sutra Lankara and the Uttara Tantra, Gyur Lama. So those 5 important texts taught by Maitreya Buddha to a Sangha, who then brought them back to earth and then taught his disciples and established that method lineage. So we need to practice both, motivation of bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness. So the arhats, the Hinayana practitioners who attain liberation from cyclic existence, they meditate on emptiness, on the Prasangika view of emptiness, but they don't practice the method, they don't practice bodhicitta, so they attain nirvana and then later have to start enter the Mahayana path and start developing bodhicitta. So it takes much longer to attain enlightenment by following that way, Mahayana teachers tell us we need to practice both together to achieve enlightenment more quickly. Now, in Vajrayana, the method is called great bliss. So it's the mind of great bliss that meditates on emptiness and attains enlightenment. So anyway, that's another topic for another time, but just to mention that as the other wings of the bird, in the Mahayana. Of course, Mahayana is totally based on, the Vajrayana is totally based on bodhicitta, but in addition, there's this, and part of what makes it the quick path is meditating on emptiness with the mind of great bliss. Of course, I have no idea how to do that, but what I've heard, So, and I'm not just saying that. So what's he saying? Yeah, the Madhyamaka therefore contains the best teachings on both profound view and extensive conduct. Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Lamrim Chenmo, 3 volumes, this is volume 1, elaborates in great detail the steps of the sutra or paramitayana path, but when it comes to the Vajrayana, it states simply that we should enter this path. It doesn't explain the graded path of Tantra in detail as it does the sutra path. However, Lama Tsongkhapa wrote another text, some of which at least has been translated in English, called The Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path of Mantra, or of Tantra. So that's the Vajrayana equivalent of the Great Treatise. The Great Treatise on the Stages of the Path of Mantra, translated some of it at least, Thomas Yarnell. I think Wisdom Publications may be republishing that. It was published in New York. The Bob Thurman's people, the American AIBS, the American Institute for Buddhist Studies, I think. So that's also very important. And Jeffrey Hopkins actually translated the beginning part of it in a couple of books that were published by Snowline in the very early days, in the 80s. Tantra in Tibet and Deity Yoga. So, there are 4 schools of Tantra. The Kriya Tantra, the Action Tantra, Performance Tantra, Yoga. Kriya Tantra, Performance Tantra, Yoga Tantra, and then Highest Yoga Tantra. So so Jeffrey's books, the Deity, Tantra in Tibet and Deity Yoga covered the three lower schools. So I'm not sure if the other book, I don't think I have it. I need to look, but I'm not sure what part of that path it covers. But if you look on Amazon, I'm sure it'll tell you. Great Treatise, Stages of the Path of Mantra, Thomas Yarnell. Okay. So the short text by Lama Tsongkhapa that we're going to talk about here, the foundation of all good qualities, is rooted in the Madhyamaka teachings and is therefore very important that you understand. It is therefore very important that you understand it. So I don't know if you have this in front of you, but the link is there on Kurukulla. The first verse reads, the foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable Guru. Correct devotion to him is the root of the path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon him with great respect. This verse obviously, so this is the commentary by Kuno Lama Rinpoche, this verse obviously is about Guru practice. All the good qualities of liberation, the boundless state, tapa in Tibetan, and enlightenment, the ultimate goal, depend upon the Guru. Therefore, it's necessary to find a perfect Guru who has all the qualities explained in the Lamrim teachings. Our responsibility as disciples is to follow the Guru's instructions exactly, offer service, make prostrations, and so forth. By following the perfect Guru perfectly, we can receive enlightenment. If instead we follow a misleading guide, a false teacher, all we'll receive is rebirth in one of the lower realms, such as the hells. Why do we need a Guru? Because we're trying to reach enlightenment and don't know what it is. The Guru knows what enlightenment is. Therefore, we need to find and then follow a Guru. Since the extremely kind and venerable Guru is the foundation of all good qualities, the good qualities of liberation and enlightenment, the first thing we must do is to find a perfectly qualified Guru. Then we must follow that Guru correctly by making material offerings, offering respect and service, and doing whatever else should be done. But the main thing, the most important thing, the essence of following the Guru correctly is to follow the Guru's instructions exactly. So, actually I've been teaching another class on Thursdays for our center in Florida, Vicky knows, on Guru devotion or on spiritual teacher, one of the Discovering Buddhism modules. And this book by Lama Zopa Rinpoche is called The Heart of the Path. And the subtitle is Seeing the Guru as Buddha. So Rinpoche didn't mention that, but actually the essence of Guru devotion is to see the Guru as a Buddha. So I might come back to that, but since I've already been doing that, in case I get bored, I think I'll just move on at this point. But just the first line and the title of this text is the foundation of all good qualities. Yönten Shu Gyuma, that's what it is in Tibetan. So you say that's the name of the text in Tibetan. Everybody knows what you mean. The foundation of all good qualities is the kind and venerable guru. So, right there it says it all. And there's no question that the most important thing in life really is to find the right guru and follow that guru correctly. And, there are many advantages of following the guru, and there are serious disadvantages in incorrectly following. There are advantages in following the guru correctly, having found the guru, and there are disadvantages, severe disadvantages in not following the guru correctly. And, then there's teachings in the Lamrim, how to devote ourselves to the guru in action and how to follow the guru in thought. And thought mainly means to see that the guru is the Buddha. And that's, there are scriptural quotations to support that. There's logical reasoning. And there's also, to some extent, our experience. As most of us or all of us, we've had kind of various heroes in our life, or people we admired, people we wanted to be like, maybe our mother or our father, or a particular school teacher, or some other kind of mentor. If we're wanting to be a writer, then we had some writing heroes, or we aspired to emulate, or if we're musicians, there was some musician that we wanted to be like. So I never really knew anybody that I wanted to be like. I'd had some good teachers when I was studying, practicing medicine. In fact, when I was thinking about becoming a psychiatrist, and I looked a little more closely at the psychiatrists for whom I was working, I decided I definitely didn't want to finish up like those guys. So that's why I didn't become a psychiatrist. So that was kind of the opposite effect, but beneficial. And anyway, the best psychiatrist that ever lived was the Buddha. And then, when I ran into the Dharma when I really ran into it at Kopan Monastery, when I attended a meditation course by Lama Zopa Rinpoche in fall of 72, and I met him and I met Lama Yeshe, then I definitely wanted to be like them. They were like, and they are just amazing people, And then, then later on, through them, we met His Holiness the Dalai Lama and His Holiness's tutors, Ling Rinpoche and Treatise Rinpoche, and then many other great lamas like Kuno Lama Rinpoche, who was also just the most amazing teacher. He was actually, one of the most famous Mahayana Buddhist texts is, you could almost say the most famous, is Shantideva's Bodhicharyavatara, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And His Holiness teaches that text quite a lot. And as I mentioned before, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to quote from it before the day's teachings, and then use that particular verse as a motivation, bodhicitta motivation for the rest of the day. And in fact, I don't have it right here to wave around, but Wisdom Publications has just published a book called Patience, which is Lama Zopa Rinpoche's teachings on the 6th chapter of Shantideva's text, Bodhicharyavatara. The 6th chapter is on patience. Kunu Lama Rinpoche was the Dalai Lama's main teacher. He taught Bodhicharyavatara to His Holiness. So His Holiness will usually mention that when he begins giving teachings on Bodhicharyavatara, but when he mentions the lineage of the teachings that he's received, as many of the Lamas do when they begin a teaching, where they, to show that they're not just making it up, that they've actually received a transmission of the particular text they're teaching. So His Holiness will mention Kunu Lama Rinpoche. So if you Google Kunu Lama Rinpoche, you'll find more extensive biographies and other stories about him and pictures of him and so forth. One of the stories I liked was that when, he was a total renunciate, and he lived very, very, very simply. And when people came to see him and made an offering, he would take the offering and throw it away in the corner of the room somewhere. It was like sort of meaningless, whatever it was. He had a big impact on us. I think comes later in this teaching. I'm not sure. He gave us two teachings. One was a commentary here on foundational good qualities. The other was a commentary on A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, the very first Lamrim text, the text that great Atisha wrote when he first came to Tibet to explain the fundamentals of the Dharma to Tibetan people, after a period of suppression of Buddhist teachings in Tibet by an anti-Buddhist king. When that king was assassinated and Buddhism started to regenerate in Tibet, there were a lot of fake teachers coming to take advantage of ignorant Tibetan people. So a lot of wrong concepts were being introduced into Tibet at that time. So the king, Lama Yeshe, king in Western Tibet, which hadn't been damaged so much by the anti-Buddhist king Langdama, he was very upset by what he saw as the degeneration of Dharma in Tibet. So he invited Atisha, one of the most famous Indian teachers at the time, to come to Tibet and re-establish pure Dharma. So one of the first things Atisha did was, write this text, A Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, which, crystallized all Buddha's 40 years of teachings into this coherent Lamrim, or Stages of the Path structure, for the first time. And so Kunu Lama Rinpoche gave us a commentary, which is also online at lamayeshe.com. His commentary on Atisha's text. So maybe we can go through that another time. Very important text, obviously. Okay, so I think we'll go on to the next verse. This text, the foundation of all good qualities, although short, explains the entire graduated path. Years ago, our great teacher, Geshe Tsulga, who was the resident teacher at Kurukulla Center from 93 until 10 years ago, November 2010, he passed away. We'll be doing some commemoration coming up, I think. Right, Bob? You heard about that? Yeah, so keep your eye at Kurukulla website or Facebook page, but we'll be commemorating the 10th anniversary of Geshe Tsulga's passing. He gave some amazing teachings, and in fact, where Kunu Lama Rinpoche mentioned these with respect to Buddha Dharma, there are 4 schools of philosophical thought. In Tibetan, the text that we study is called Dukta, or well, I don't know if that's the name of the text, but the topic is Dukta, or tenets, 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 Buddhist tenets. There's actually Geshe Tsulga's commentary that he gave on that text, translated by Thupten Damcho at Kurukulla Center. That's a very in-depth explanation of Buddhist tenets. I think it may not be posted on the Kurukulla website, but the Kadampa Center has posted it on their website. Geshe Tsulga had us memorize this text in English, which we did, but I've forgotten it. Although short, explains the entire graduated path, including the 6 perfections, especially the perfection of wisdom and the necessity of entering the Vajrayana path. The next verse, second verse, then explains the difficulty of receiving a perfect human rebirth. So I'll just read it first. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful and difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. So, I mentioned Tiesha's seminal text on the Lam Rim. So that text introduced the concept of what's often called the 3 scopes. But again, Lama Zopa Rinpoche doesn't like that translation. So more literal translation, the one that Lama Zopa Rinpoche prefers, is the paths of the 3 capable beings. The lower capable being, the middle capable being, and the great capable being. Someone sort of with a kind of very limited mind like mine finds that English a little clumsy. It doesn't quite work in English. The lower capable being, you could say the being of least capability, the being of intermediate capability, and the being of greatest capability. That might explain, that might language-wise be a little clearer, but anyway. Sometimes called the lower scope, the middle scope, and the great scope. So this idea of these 3 levels of practitioner. So in terms of practitioners, there are non-practitioners who don't practice Dharma, aren't Buddhist, outsiders. And there are the 3 levels of Buddhist practitioner. Well, some so-called Buddhist practitioners might not even make it onto the lower scope, but they think they might think they're practicing Dharma, but they may not be. Hard for me to judge. But in terms of the way these three levels of practice are, the way these three levels of practice is introduced in the whole structure of the Lam Rim, or the stages of the path to enlightenment. There are four main headings. The first heading is the preeminent qualities of the compiler, which is given to show that the teachings have a pure source. So what that really refers to, not the life story of the Buddha, it's the story of a teacher who formulated this Lam Rim genre of teachings, or this way of presenting the Buddha's teachings, to show how qualified he was, how deeply knowledgeable he was, and how he was fully capable of presenting the Buddha's teachings in this way without losing their essence, or without distorting them, without introducing things that the Buddha hadn't taught. He was a perfect person to do this. So that talks about his life and how he studied and how he practiced, and the lengths he went to obtain the best teachings from the best teachers and so forth. And then the second outline is the qualities of the Lam Rim teachings, stages of path teachings themselves. So that's presented in a couple of different ways to show the advantages of studying the Buddha's teachings by using the Lam Rim. So then the third main outline is how to listen as a student, how to listen, and as a teacher, how to teach the Lam Rim. So what the student should do, what the teacher should do, and what the students and teachers should do together at the end of the session. And then the fourth, so those are fairly, concise sections. The main body of the teachings in the fourth outline, which is the way that disciples are led on the graduated path to enlightenment. So that's divided into two. How to follow the guru, which is the root of the path. So that's the first line of this text, sort of launches into that. The foundation of all good qualities, kind, venerable guru. So how to generate devotion to the spiritual teacher, and then what to do once we've become devoted to the teacher. So that again is divided into two parts. One is inspiring or exhorting ourselves to practice Dharma by understanding the perfect human rebirth, or another way to put it, encouraging ourselves to extract the essence of our perfect human rebirth. So that's we're coming to here, encouraging ourselves, inspiring ourselves, exhorting ourselves to extract the essence of this perfect human rebirth that we may or may not have received. We have to see. We have to study those teachings to see if we have indeed received a perfect human rebirth. And the second part of that is how to extract the essence from this perfect human rebirth, and how to extract the essence. Then comes these three levels of practice, the path of the lower capable being, path of the middle capable, path the great capable being. So these three paths have three distinct goals. The goal of the practitioner, of the goal of the lower capable being is to avoid being reborn in the three lower realms again. So there are three lower realms, three upper realms we talked about last week. So lower capable being is just terrified of being reborn as a hell being or a hungry ghost or as an animal. So just wants to be reborn as a human or in the upper realms, maybe in the God realm, just not in the lower realms. So those teachings, talk about the teachings in the that level are the impermanence and death, three lower realms, refuge, and karma. So those teachings explain how to avoid being reborn in the lower realms. The being of higher intelligence, so sometimes Lama Zopa used to call it the path of the being of lower intelligence, middle intelligence, and great intelligence. So those who are more intelligent than the lower level beings see that just being reborn again in cyclic existence, even if it's in the upper realms, where there's less suffering than the lower realms, it's like fighting hard or doing everything you can to get a more comfortable cell in prison. The smart person would try to figure out how to escape from prison. But if you're not that smart, then all you try is to be comfortable while you're in prison. And so they say, well, that's not sufficient, because even though you get a better rebirth as a human, or like this time, there's no guarantee that when this life ends, as it certainly will, and probably soon, there's no guarantee that we won't be reborn in the lower realms. So it's not really an ultimate solution at all. It's just a stopgap. So, so the being of the middle capable being, or the being of the intermediate level of intelligence, will set their sights on complete freedom from cyclic existence. So the teachings there explain how to escape from cyclic existence. So it's teaching on Four Noble Truths and the 12 links of dependent origination and so forth, and how to realize emptiness and attain liberation. Fundamentally, how to generate the mind of renunciation, complete renunciation of cyclic existence, by seeing that even the pleasures of cyclic existence are not actually pleasures, they're just suffering in disguise. Anyway, that comes later. And then the path of the great capable being, or the being of highest intelligence, is those practitioners see that attaining liberation, just freeing myself from cyclic existence, is selfish and cruel. It's okay for me, but what about all the other sentient beings upon whose kindness I've depended on so much in this and previous lives, whose, the sentient beings without whom these teachings wouldn't even exist. So how can I just look after myself and leave the others behind in suffering. The only real goal is to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment. And then, as I said at the beginning, the only way to bring all sentient beings to enlightenment is to reach enlightenment first myself, so that I know the way. And the white cat is making a slightly earlier entrance tonight, I see. Must be time to finish. My black cat is meowing outside the door. The only really worthwhile goal is to attain enlightenment in order to enlighten all sentient beings. So then the path of the great intelligent, greatly capable being is the one that explains how to attain enlightenment. So those paths are presented in the context of how to extract the essence from the perfect human rebirth. So the prior teaching in the way the Lamrim is set up. So if you look at the outline, the first thing is to recognize the perfect human rebirth. So as Kurukulla Lama Rinpoche says, commenting on this second verse of the Foundation of All Good Qualities, since beginningless time in numberless bodies, we've been wandering through the 6 samsaric realms, but this is the one time we've received a perfect human rebirth. A rebirth such as this, which is free from the 8 unfree states and possessed of the 10 richnesses, will be extremely difficult to find again. We can see how rare it is by meditating in 3 ways: on cause, example, and number. It's hard enough to find an ordinary human rebirth, let alone one with these 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. The perfect human rebirth is much harder to find than a regular one. There's a story that a Lama was giving this teaching in Tibet, and one of the monks who was listening to this, it's hard enough to find an ordinary human rebirth, let alone one with the 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. He said to his friend, he's only saying that because he hasn't been to China, where even then there were, millions of people. So how hard can it be, Go to China, there's millions of humans, Missed the point. Failure to grasp the concept, as we say. So here, this perfect human rebirth gives us a chance of continuing to be reborn in the realms of suffering or of attaining enlightenment. It offers every possibility. Therefore, it is highly significant. What we should use it for is for attaining enlightenment. Since we've received a perfect human rebirth just this once, we should use it to attain enlightenment. Therefore, the teaching says, please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. Well, let's take issue with the literal wording here. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once. Then Ribush says, since we've received perfect human rebirth just this once, we should use it to attain enlightenment. I think just this once is for emphasis or for encouragement, because if you really think about what it takes to receive a perfect human rebirth that has these 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses, we'll see that, and as it says, it's difficult to find again. It's difficult to find again. It's rare and precious. Why? Because the cause is extremely difficult to create. So the first thing in the Lamrim teaching on perfect human rebirth is how to recognize. What is a perfect human rebirth? Well, it's one that has these 8 freedoms and 10 richnesses. So what are they? So the 8 freedoms are freedoms from being born in 8 states or kinds of existence where it's impossible to practice Dharma. So they're unfree states because we don't have the freedom to practice Dharma in those states. So 4 of them are non-human states and 4 of them are human states. So the 4 non-human states are, rebirth in the hell realm, rebirth in the hungry ghost realm, rebirth in the animal realm. So rebirth in the 3 lower realms. Can't practice Dharma in the lower realms. Then the 4th non-human state is the God realms. So in the God realms, where there's incredible pleasure and most of the time not much suffering, it's basically impossible to practice Dharma because there's no interest. You don't see the reason. As the Buddha, the very first thing the Buddha taught to inspire his followers to practice Dharma was the first noble truth, the truth of suffering. So in the God realms, there's no suffering for the gods to look at. So there's no way to understand the necessity to practice Dharma. So even if it's explained, there's just no interest. So it's kind of being intoxicated by pleasure. So, intoxicated person can't really practice Dharma. So not being born in those 4 states is the first 4 of the 8 freedoms. Then there are the 4 human unfree states. So the first is being born in what's called, a dark period. So dark period. So it's a period where the teachings don't exist on earth. So, the Buddha was born say 2,600 years ago. Humans existed for many years before that, but there were no Dharma teaching. That was a dark period. And I think, did I tell a story last time about when Prince Siddhartha was born, the king had this elderly sage, with a big white beard, look at the kid, and the guy started crying. And the king was freaked out. Oh, why are you crying? He thought there's something wrong with the baby. And the old man said, well, he's going to be a great teacher. So why are you crying? He said, because I'll be dead before he starts giving his teachings. There was also a dark period so the Buddha had been born, but he hadn't started teaching yet. So up until the time he started teaching the 4 Noble Truths, up until the time he, 7 weeks after he reached enlightenment, that was the end of the dark period. So after the Buddha turned the wheel of Dharma for the first time, then that's when the darkness started to become dispelled. So if we're born in a dark period, now the Buddha's teachings exist, but they're sort of disappearing. And who knows how much longer they'll really be around, 500 years maybe, or 1,000 years, I mean, who knows? And it comes a little bit later, but I can say it now, that, the definition of the existence of the teachings is not that there are a few books in a library somewhere. There are two kinds of teaching, actually. There's the written teaching, or maybe a verbal teaching, given by someone like me who doesn't really understand it and who hasn't had really an experience of the teaching, just heard a few things and like a parrot or a tape recorder can kind of regurgitate it. That's kind of one level of teaching. The other level, the main level of teaching, is the realization of the teaching that exists in the minds of those who have studied the teaching, contemplated the teaching, meditated on the teaching, who have purified their mind through purification practice, who've enriched their mind through enrichment practices, created a lot of merit, who've found a teacher, who've studied with a teacher, who've practiced under the guidance of the teacher, and actually had experience of the teaching, who've realized the teaching, who've had realizations. So that's the actual existence of the teaching. So when you look at even today, the Buddhist teachers, there are a lot of still, fortunately, a lot of realized teachers around. The teachings exist at that level at the present moment, with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with our teachers, with many, still many, there are many realized teachers, certainly among Tibetan lamas, among Western practitioners, Western teachers, I don't know. Of course, it's impossible to know who's who just by looking at people or even listening to them, who's realized what. But understanding, knowing intellectually, what it takes to have a realization, I'm a little skeptical of how many. I'll tell you one thing. I think it was the 5th meditation course in November 1973. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was giving these teachings, Lamrim teaching, and there are about 200 people at that course, the 5th course. So the first course I went to was the 3rd course. And the first course at Kopan, the first Kopan meditation course, was given in the spring of 71. And the second course, there are about 20 people there. You can see the photos at lamayeshe.com. And the second course was given in the spring of 72. And then the 3rd course was given in the fall of 72. So that was the first course that I attended. There were about, 54 people, I think, started that course. Maybe a couple dropped out. Then the 4th course was given in the spring of 73. There were about 120 people there. And the 5th course was given in the fall of 73. For 200 people. So at one point, Rinpoche was talking about realizations, and he looked around the room, took everybody in, and said, you know, if one person here at this course in their lifetime realizes the perfect human rebirth, he says that will be an amazing thing. So it's like one person out of 200, you know, all these eager students, realizes the very first teaching in the whole path, it'll be an amazing thing. Well, you know, obviously I know I haven't realized it, so it was 199. So I don't, of course, you know, what's the expression? Those who know don't say, and those who say don't know. So, you know, the fact that nobody's saying it, that may be a good sign. But if anyone was there who was at that course was boasting, I've realized perfect human rebirth, grain of salt. So, so these, you know, I mean, over the 50 years or so, that nearly 50 years that, you know, I've been involved in this, I've seen a lot of the great teachers pass away, you know, Lama Yeshe, and then, you know, in the 80s, there was, you know, His Holiness Trija Rinpoche passed away, and His Holiness Ling Rinpoche, and His Holiness Song Rinpoche, and Geshe Rapton, and in 1977, Kunu Lama Rinpoche, who gave his teaching, passed away. And then, you know, other lamas with whom we studied, Kurti Senshab Rinpoche, and then Choden Rinpoche, who came to Kurukulla Center a number of times. He passed away. And of course, I mentioned, you know, our great teacher Geshe Tsulga passed away. You know, all these realized lamas passed away. Choden Rinpoche, Kurti Senshab Rinpoche, you know, I mean, they're just teachers that that I knew, and others too have passed away. So, you know, luckily His Holiness Dalai Lama is still here. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is still here. But, you know, a lot of these highly realized lamas passed away over the last 30, 40 years, and more are passing away all the time. So, you know, hopefully there'll be Tibetans who will be studying, but, you know, Geshe Lama Konchog passed away. But when you look at how these lamas who passed away studied and practiced, and first of all, who they were, when they came into their last life, you know, the lives I'm talking about, you know, how they were already highly developed in their lives before that one. So, of course, they're incarnating, and His Holiness Serkong Rinpoche, I didn't mention. You know, hopefully their incarnations, you know, we had His Holiness Ling Rinpoche's incarnation, came to Kurukulla Center. His Holiness Trija Rinpoche's incarnation has taken a different path. His Holiness Serkong Rinpoche's incarnation, disrobed, is a lay person, but giving teachings. I haven't met him. And there are incarnations of these other lamas that I mentioned, Choden Rinpoche, And also Geshe Zopa passed away a few years ago. Geshe Rapton's incarnation has taken a different path. Geshe Zopa's incarnation. Anyway, there's still hope, but there are fewer of them. And so it's not difficult to envision a time when there are fewer and fewer of these realized lamas among us, and few, if any, realized Western teachers. So then again, there'll be a dark period. So if people are born at that time, again, they will not have the freedom. You know, if the Dharma doesn't exist, there's no freedom to practice Dharma. So it gets hard, even if it's not quite a dark period yet, or if it's a dark period has just ended. It's still, you've got to be right place at the right time, you know, to meet the teachings. So it's difficult. So this, so the period of existence of the Buddha's teachings and the explanation of what's a dark period and what's a light period, it involves the evolution of the universe. So the explanation in Buddhist cosmological explanation is that there are 4 distinct periods in the life cycle of a world system. You know, world system that, or I don't know if you can say a universe or a galaxy that contains a human realm like this one. So there's and they're called eons, great eons. So there's the great eon, and an eon is a vast period of time. There's the great eon of evolution where, you know, Big Bang or something happens, you know, and the world, you know, the stars and planets and other bodies begin to, you know, matter, when matter begins to coalesce and form objects, material objects. So it's not that there wasn't any potential to form it during this great eon. So that, I'll go back. The great eon of evolution is preceded by a great eon of emptiness, when there are no physical objects, but, you know, there are subatomic particles, I guess you'd say. And so they, you know, there are the building blocks of matter, but very subtle and not discernible to the senses and not capable of supporting physical life. So there's this great eon of emptiness, and then that gradually becomes a great eon of evolution. So then the universes and stars and things begin to develop. Then there's the great eon of relative stability, which is what we're in now, when there is Earth and planets and stars, and there are human realms and animal realms and other realms that the 6 realms, but we can't see them. And then eventually there's the great eon of devolution, when everything falls apart and disintegrates, and then that transitions into another great eon of emptiness. So there's 4 great eons. So in the great eon of relative stability, there are 20 lesser eons. And at the beginning of one of these lesser eons, the human beings have bodies of light, and they have very long life, almost like gods, but they're humans, and they live for like 10,000 eons, 10,000 years. But because, and they have bodies of light and very pure enjoyments and what we call a pure lifestyle, if you can call it that. But the seed of delusion is in their mind. So gradually that seed, which had not been eradicated, begins to develop, and the other delusions begin to develop, and they become, attachment and aversion begin to develop. And as these delusions develop, their lives get shorter and shorter, and they become more materialistic, and gradually their bodies become physical. And then the lifespan continues to decrease. And as the lifespan is decreasing, when it gets to around 100, and the physical bodies and the physical world is quite well developed, karmically, those human beings are suitable to receive the Dharma teachings, and that's when the Buddha, like Shakyamuni Buddha or next time Maitreya Buddha, appears and begins to give teachings. So that's so those human beings from the 10,000 year lifespan, which everything's blissful and great, but there's no Dharma teaching. So there's no way to realize suffering like the gods, So anyway, as the lifespan gets shorter and shorter, when it gets down to about 100 or something like that, then, as it was 2,600 years ago, then somehow karmically the human beings are capable of receiving teachings, and the Buddha manifests and gives the teachings. And then they exist for 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, however many years it's going to be. And then the teachings disappear, and their lifespan keeps getting shorter and shorter, and life becomes more and more difficult and more violent, and humans become more and more ugly, and their bodies become very short. And there's incredible turmoil and fighting, but gradually that negative karma expends itself, and the life begin to get better. And then it goes up and up and up until it goes up to 10,000 years again. But on the way up, even the life is equivalent to what it is now or what it was then, 2,500 years ago, but the karma isn't right, so there are no teachings given. So all that way on the way up is a dark period. Or then again all the way down until finally the next human beings at the right time, the right karma, and then the next Buddha appears and gives teachings. So you can see from those vast periods of time, there's only a very short window where the Dharma teachings exist. All the rest is a dark period. So many sentient beings are born human, but it's kind of useless because there are no Dharma teachings. They're born in a dark period. So those are unfree states. So not being born in a dark period, not being born as a human in a dark period, is the fifth freedom. And you can see it's very right there, just comparing the spans of time. The odds are, if you're going to be born human, you'll be born in a dark period, not in a light period, because there's so much more dark than light. So that's that. So even though it's a light period, even though the Buddha has descended and given teachings, the Buddha was in this little part of India to start with. So if you're born when the Buddha was giving teachings, it's not a dark period, but you're born in a distant place. So you're born at a time when the Dharma teachings existed, but you're born in a place where the teachings had not reached. So if you were born in Australia back then, tough luck. If you're born in Tibet at that point, when the Buddha first started giving teaching, if you're born anywhere except in India, you're born in the wrong place. You're born in a place where the teachings did not exist. So, that place where the teachings existed got bigger and bigger as the Buddhist teachings spread. But still, there were more places on earth where there weren't teachings than where there were. So I mentioned the definition of where the teachings exist. One is, in the minds of the realized teachings, but the lifeblood of the teachings, there are two ways. This comes in the next section, but what's called in a religious country is where the Dharma, where the teachings exist, and the existence of the teachings is defined. It can be defined. Is defined two ways. One is geographically. So geographically, the center of a religious country is Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha attained enlightenment. So that is the center of a religious country. And but the real definition of the existence of the teachings is where the lineage of the ordinations exists. And the lineage of the ordinations is where it's possible to become a monk, get ordained as a monk or nun. So it means the existence of the Sangha. And the Sangha in this case is defined as 4 or more fully ordained monks. Really needs 5 because one has to be as an abbot. So when you take ordination as a novice monk, you have an abbot who's a fully ordained monk. In our case, when we got ordained in Bodh Gaya in 1974, there were 10 of us Westerners got ordained together at that time. Our abbot was His Holiness Ling Rinpoche, previous life of the one who His Holiness Dalai Lama's senior tutor. So he gave the ordination, and another great teacher passed away, Lati Rinpoche. And there were 4 fully ordained monks. So at a certain point in the ceremony, the abbot has to ask the universal Sangha, will you accept this person into the monastic community? So you can't really ask the cosmic Sangha like that and expect, a quick answer from the cosmos. So they have 4 fully ordained monks as representatives of the universal Sangha. So the abbot asks this, will you accept? And usually they say, I haven't heard of anyone where they said no, but there's this ritual anyway. So we had His Holiness Serkong Rinpoche, who was a debate partner of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And we had the great Lati Rinpoche. So I forgot to mention him. He was also passed away some years ago. Lati Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So, of the 10 of us who got ordained, there are only two nuns who have maintained their ordination in the, what's coming, 74, so 47, in January the 14th, it'll be the 47th anniversary. So 2 nuns out of the 10 of us. 4 monks, gone. 4 nuns. Well, one of them disrobed and then a year later took ordination again, but she had that break. But of the 10 of us, only 2 remain unscathed. So I was the worst monk. I only lasted 12 years. The others a couple of the others lasted 20. One of the others lasted 26 years. So one of them was Gareth Sparham. He lasted a long time. The translator of this book, Kunu Lama Rinpoche's book. Gareth, we were ordained together, but yeah, and he studied at the dialectic school in Dharamsala. Very knowledgeable, and he's translated a bunch of things. Also translated this book on the Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary on the 50 verses of Guru devotion, Fulfillment of All Hopes. It was also by Gareth Sparham. So he was, what am I saying? So he was, so where it's, anyway, so the center of religious country, the teachings are said to exist where it's still possible where the lineage of the ordination still exists, where it's possible to receive ordination. If we're not born in a place where it's possible to receive the ordination, then that's not the sixth freedom. Then you don't have the freedom, complete freedom to practice Dharma. So just finish the 8 freedoms. Then the 7th one, traditionally it's not being, in the text it says being born deaf or foolish. So foolish means having some mental hindrances. So that's pretty clear. If you're mentally disturbed, you can't really practice Dharma. And, being deaf isn't as big a shortcoming as it might have been in terms of, lip reading and being able to read texts and so on. But if you're deaf, what you can't receive is the oral transmission of teachings. So the oral transmission is considered an important part of, these teachings have come down to us 2,600 years from the Buddha himself. And all these important teachings have a lineage. It can be, in many cases, traced back to the Buddha himself. So that if you're deaf, you can't receive that sort of sometimes called the ear-whispered lineage, the oral transmission anyway. So if you receive the oral transmission of a text, then that's carries, inconceivable blessings of the whole lineage. All these incredible teachers that received this teaching from the Buddha to his disciples, to their disciples, down and down over the centuries, over the millennia, down to us, through His Holiness the Dalai Lama, these tutors, through Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all these great Tibetan lamas. So if you're deaf, you can definitely study teachings and understand teachings and practice and so on, but you don't receive the lineage. So that's so there's an important thing missing. So this perfect human rebirth it's perfect, So if you're missing that bit, it's not perfect, not complete. So there's so even though you're born human and it's not a dark period, the teachings exist, and you're not born in a place where there are no teachings. You're born in a place where there's teachings, but if you're mentally something wrong, or if you're deaf, then it's not perfect. So then, even if you're born human, in a non-dark period, a light period, and without the shortcomings of the mental deficiency or deafness, but you're born to a family that is, very strongly against the Buddhist teachings, or very fixed in its views. You're brought up in a very, very materialistic way, or the strong atheists, or very devout followers of other religions, where it's just unthinkable that you could leave that religion and go and practice another one. So, with fixed wrong views, where there's no acceptance of past and future lives, reincarnation, or Four Noble Truths, or karma, or these key essential Buddhist teachings. So if you are not born in that situation and you have all these other 7 freedoms, then you have the 8 freedoms, freedom to fully practice Dharma. So those are the 8 freedoms of the perfect human rebirth. So then on top of those, there are 10 richnesses, which we have to do next week because I don't have time now. But, joining us all the way from Australia, down there, I see Kathy Victor, who doesn't have her camera on, but you can see her smiling face there. Can everybody see Kathy down there? So partly responsible for my being here tonight, because Kathy and her husband Tom were old friends from Melbourne, even before we all went to Queensland. And before I left Australia with my girlfriend Yeshe, who's one of the 2 people who've survived ordination to this point, nearly 47 years. 4 of us bought some land together, and that land has now become Chenrezig Institute, and Kathy is the mother of Chenrezig Institute, and has been organising teachings there for since the Lamas first went to Australia in 1974. And she and her husband Tom organised the first Australian Lamrim course, a place called Diamond Valley, and introduced the Lamas to the land that became Chenrezig Institute. And Tom and Kathy inspired us to go to Bali when we left Australia for the first time. And although our plan was to go back to the West, when we first went to Bali, we met a bunch of people who'd come down the hippie trail from America and Europe through the Middle East and Afghanistan and Pakistan and India and Nepal, and then all the way through Southeast Asia down to Bali. And some of them were on their way to Australia to earn enough money to go back. And some of them hit Bali and turned around and went back from there. So we decided to not go back to the West, but to stay in the East, and finished up in Nepal and meeting the Lamas in 1972. And Tom and Kathy came to the 4th Kopan course in the spring of 1973, and then they went back to Australia and then invited the Lamas to come to Australia and established the first FPMT centre in Australia, Chenrezig Institute. And come on, Kath, give us a wave. She's too shy. Kathy. No, okay. Anyway, so that's that little story there. And so I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for being here tonight. So as Kurukulla Lama inspired us to start with bodhicitta, motivation, and we've been reading his and Lama Tsongkhapa's teaching on the foundation of all good qualities. So really we've created a lot of merit. And so as we, have the right motivation, the right action, we need to wrap up with the right dedication. So think, because of this merit, so visualize a huge pile of merit, like, this vast mountain of jewels, beyond precious. So as Rinpoche says, merit is the key to all success, worldly success and success in our Dharma practice. So we want to protect that merit from being destroyed by anger, wrong views. So we dedicate it. So I think because of this merit, may all sentient beings quickly reach enlightenment. Okay, guys, so thank you very much, and hope to see you next week. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Dr. Nick.
You're welcome.
Thank you.